The morning piece of Miller's Café shattered when coffee splashed across Isaiah Bennett's shirt. Laughter erupted. The man who'd done it, broad-shouldered, expensive suit, gold Rolex catching the light, grinned like he'd just won something. Isaiah didn't yell. Didn't move. He just locked eyes with the stranger, and something in that stare made the entire cafe go silent. The kind of silence that comes right before thunder. Who was this quiet single dad? And why did that look promise consequences the bully couldn't begin to imagine? Before we continue, let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give it a like, and share it with someone who'd love this story too. Isaiah Bennett stood at the bathroom mirror of his small two-bedroom apartment in South Philadelphia, carefully shaving around the scar that ran from his left ear to his jawline. Outside the door, he could hear his 8-year-old son, Cameron, singing off-key to some cartoon theme song while eating cereal. "Dad, we're gonna be late," Cameron called out. "2 minutes, Cam," Isaiah replied, his voice carrying the kind of calm that came from years of keeping his head in situations where panic got people killed. He was 41 years old, lean and athletic despite the demanding schedule of single parenthood. His hands were steady as he finished shaving, the same hands that used to field strip an M4 carbine in complete darkness. But that was another life. A life Cameron knew nothing about. Isaiah grabbed the framed photo from the bathroom counter. His wife, Alicia, smiled back at him. 3 years gone. Cancer had taken her fast, leaving him alone to raise their son. He'd left the army 2 weeks after her funeral, an honorable discharge from Delta Force, though he never told anyone what unit he'd served in. When people asked, he just said Army and changed the subject. Now he worked 2 jobs, driving for a rideshare service during the day and doing overnight security at a warehouse in Kensington. The money was never quite enough, but he made it work. He always made it work. "Dad? Seriously?" Isaiah smiled and opened the door. Cameron stood there in his school uniform, backpack already on, looking every bit like his mother with those bright eyes and that determined expression. "Ready, soldier?" Cameron rolled his eyes. "Dad, I'm not a soldier. I'm 8. "Best age to start training," Isaiah said, ruffling his son's hair as they headed for the door. The drive to Cameron's school took 15 minutes through morning traffic. Isaiah pulled up to the drop-off line at Webster Elementary, watching other parents in newer cars, wearing business suits, carrying briefcases that probably cost more than his monthly rent. "Love you, Cam. Have a good day." "Love you too, Dad." Cameron paused at the car door. "Are you picking me up, or is it gonna be Miss Rosa again?" Isaiah felt the familiar weight in his chest. Rosa Martinez was their neighbor, a retired teacher who watched Cameron when Isaiah's schedule got tight. "Too many times lately. I'll be here. 3:15 sharp. Promise." Cameron's face brightened. "Okay. Bye, Dad." Isaiah watched his son disappear into the school, then checked his rideshare app. 3 ride requests already. He accepted the closest one and pulled back into traffic. "Hey, if you're still with me right now, I really appreciate you. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with someone who'd enjoy stories like this." By mid-morning, Isaiah had completed 6 rides and earned enough to cover groceries for the week. He allowed himself a rare luxury, stopping at Miller's Café in Rittenhouse Square, a neighborhood he usually just drove through. The cafe was locally owned, had decent coffee, and most importantly, it was quiet. He chose a corner table with his back to the wall, an old habit he couldn't break. From here, he could see the entrance, the bathroom, the emergency exit in the back, and every person in the room. Even now, 3 years out, his mind automatically catalogued exits, potential threats, angles of attack. The coffee was strong and hot. Isaiah wrapped both hands around the mug and allowed himself to just breathe. These moments were rare, no Cameron asking questions, no passengers in his backseat, no supervisor at the warehouse telling him which pallets to move. Just silence. His phone buzzed. A text from Cameron's teacher. "Cameron did great on his math test. 95%. He wanted you to know." Isaiah smiled, typing back with one hand. "That's my boy. Tell him I'm proud." He set the phone down and stared out the window at the tree-lined street. Rittenhouse Square was a different world. Brownstone apartments that sold for millions, people walking designer dogs, women in yoga pants carrying $5 lattes. He didn't belong here, but nobody bothered him. He was just another face in the crowd. That changed when Dominic Carver walked through the door. Isaiah noticed him immediately. Hard not to. The man was 6'3", built like a linebacker gone soft around the middle, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost $3,000. His hair was perfectly styled, his shoes were Italian leather, and he moved through the cafe like he owned it. Dominic Carver was exactly that type, a corporate real estate developer who'd made his fortune buying up properties in gentrifying neighborhoods, displacing long-time residents, and building luxury condos. Isaiah had seen his face on billboards around the city, Carver Properties, building Philadelphia's future. Carver cut the line at the counter without apology. The young woman he'd stepped in front of, early 20s, probably a college student, opened her mouth to protest, then closed it when Carver shot her a look. Large cappuccino. Extra hot. And make it fast. I've got a meeting in 20 minutes. The barista, a girl named Sophie with purple hair and tired eyes, nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Coming right up. Carver turned and surveyed the cafe like a king inspecting his kingdom. His eyes passed over Isaiah without interest, just another broke nobody nursing cheap coffee. Isaiah went back to his phone, checking his schedule. He had 2 hours before his next shift started. Maybe he could swing by Cameron's school, surprise him at lunch. The noise level in the cafe rose. Carver was talking loudly on his phone, pacing near the counter. I don't care what the tenants say, Jerry. They've got 30 days to vacate or we start eviction proceedings. That building is worth 5 times what I paid once we gut it and turn it into lofts. No, forget their sob stories. This is business. Old lady with a cat? Jerry, that's not my problem. She should have bought property instead of renting for 40 years. A few people glanced over, discomfort clear on their faces. Sophie handed Carver his cappuccino without making eye contact. He took it without saying thank you. Isaiah watched this display with the same detachment he'd once used to observe enemy combatants through a scope. Predators came in all forms. This one wore Armani and carried a Mont Blanc pen instead of an AK-47, but the fundamental nature was the same, a man who took what he wanted and crushed anyone in his way. Not my problem, Isaiah thought. He'd learned to pick his battles. The world was full of men like Carver. You couldn't fight them all. Carver finished his call and looked around the cafe again, bored, restless, looking for something to entertain himself. His eyes landed on the corner where Isaiah sat today. Something shifted in Carver's expression. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was the need to establish dominance. Maybe it was simply that Isaiah was black, alone, and looked like an easy target in his faded jeans and thrift store jacket. Whatever the reason, Dominic Carver made a decision that would change everything. Carver walked directly toward Isaiah's table. His stride was deliberate, confident, the walk of a man who'd never been told no. Isaiah saw him coming. Every instinct honed over 16 years of combat operations screamed at him to assess, to calculate, to prepare. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was a cafe in Philadelphia. He was a civilian now. He had a son to think about, bills to pay, a life to live that didn't involve violence. So he stayed still and waited. Carver reached the table and didn't stop. He turned his body at the last second, a deliberate movement, practiced, and slammed his hip into the corner of Isaiah's table. The impact was hard, intentional. Isaiah's coffee mug tipped over. The hot liquid spread across the table's surface, cascading over the edge and directly into Isaiah's lap. It soaked through his jeans instantly, burning against his thigh. The cafe went quiet. Carver stepped back, looked down at the mess, and smiled. Not a smile of apology or embarrassment. A smile of satisfaction. Oh, wow. My bad, man. Carver's voice carried across the silent cafe. Didn't see you there. The lie was obvious. Everyone within 15 feet had watched Carver deliberately walk into the table. This wasn't an accident. It was a test. A power play. A man asserting dominance just because he could. Isaiah looked down at the coffee spreading across his lap. He looked at the puddle forming on the floor. Then he looked up at Dominic Carver and said nothing. The silence stretched. Carver's smile widened. He glanced around the room, making sure people were watching. "You should probably clean that up," he said, making no move to help. "Can't have you sitting there all wet like that." Isaiah felt something tighten in his chest, not anger, not yet, but the thing that came before anger. The cold calculation of whether a situation was worth the cost. He thought about Cameron. About the promise he'd made standing at Alicia's grave. "I'll be there for him. No matter what. I'll stay out of trouble. I'll build a life he can be proud of." But this wasn't about pride. This was about dignity. About the line between keeping the peace and allowing yourself to be humiliated in front of a room full of strangers who would remember this moment. Isaiah had walked away from a lot of fights. Had swallowed a lot of pride. Had learned that being a good father sometimes meant being the bigger man even when it hurt. But there was a difference between being the bigger man and being a doormat. He stood slowly. Didn't brush the coffee off his jeans. Didn't reach for napkins. Just rose to his full 6-foot height and met Carver's eyes. Isaiah wasn't as tall, wasn't as broad, but something in the way he stood made Carver take a half step back before he caught himself. The cafe held its breath. "You need to walk away," Isaiah said. His voice was low, controlled, each word deliberate. Carver blinked. He'd expected anger, shouting, maybe a shove. He hadn't expected this, the calm, the certainty, the absolute lack of fear. He recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. "Or what?" He spread his arms wide, playing to the audience. "You going to make me?" Isaiah didn't answer. He just waited, hands at his sides, weight balanced, not threatening but immovable. A wall Carver hadn't expected to hit. Sophie the barista had her phone out now, pressed to her ear. Calling the police, probably. Good. Let them come. Let them sort this out. But Carver wasn't done. Men like him never were. Not when people were watching. Not when walking away looked like losing. "Do you know who I am?" Carver stepped closer, invading Isaiah's personal space. "I own half the buildings in this neighborhood. I could buy this cafe tomorrow and have you banned from every coffee shop in Center City." "That's nice," Isaiah said flatly. "Now walk away." Carver's face flushed. The statement was simple, honest, and somehow that made it worse, because it wasn't a threat, wasn't a challenge, just a man stating a boundary. And Dominic Carver didn't do boundaries. "You got a problem with me, friend?" Carver's voice rose. "Because I'm trying to be nice here." I apologized. "It was an accident." "But you're sitting there acting like I owe you something." "It wasn't an accident," Isaiah said quietly. "And you don't owe me anything except distance." The room was dead silent now. Every conversation had stopped. Every eye was watching. An elderly couple near the window, a woman with a laptop, a group of college students, all frozen, witnessing. Carver's right hand came up fast. He shoved Isaiah's shoulder with the heel of his palm, hard, aggressive, meant to knock him back. Isaiah absorbed the impact. His body rocked slightly, then settled. He didn't shove back. Didn't grab Carver's wrist. Just stood there and let the moment breathe. "Last chance," Isaiah said, voice barely above a whisper. "Walk away. And if you're still watching at this point, thank you for staying with me. Take a second to subscribe, like this video, and share it. It truly helps this channel grow." Dominic Carver shoved again, both hands against Isaiah's chest. Real force this time. Meant to knock him into the wall. Isaiah moved with it, took 2 steps back, used the momentum to create distance. His spine touched the wall. He stopped, stood, waited. But something had changed. The way Isaiah positioned himself wasn't random. His left foot was slightly forward, weight centered, hands loose but ready. Anyone who'd seen real combat would recognize the stance immediately. An older man sitting near the door, gray beard, flannel shirt, probably mid-60s, leaned forward slightly, squinting at Isaiah. Recognition flickered across his face. "Come on!" Carver shouted, face red now. "Do something. Hit me. I know you want to." Isaiah didn't want to. That was the thing Carver couldn't understand. Isaiah had nothing to prove. He'd already fought more battles than Carver could imagine. He'd survived things that would have broken most men. But Carver needed a fight. Needed resistance. Needed Isaiah to give him an excuse. So he made the choice Isaiah knew he would make from the beginning. Carver threw a punch. It came from his right side, a wide, looping hook aimed at Isaiah's jaw. Telegraphed, slow, the kind of punch someone threw when they'd never been trained, never faced someone who actually knew how to fight. Isaiah saw it coming from a mile away. Time seemed to slow. He could duck, let the punch sail over his head, walk away while Carver stumbled. But that wouldn't stop this. Carver would come again, would escalate, would hurt someone eventually. Maybe not today, maybe not Isaiah, but someone. So Isaiah moved. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't flashy. It was just precise. He shifted his weight to his left foot, turned his shoulders, and slipped inside Carver's guard as the punch passed through empty air. His left hand came up and caught Carver's extended wrist. His right hand locked onto Carver's elbow. Basic control holds. The kind taught in every military combatives course. The kind that worked because they relied on leverage and anatomy instead of strength. Isaiah rotated Carver's arm. Not hard, not fast, just firm and controlled. Carver's body followed the movement because it had no choice. The shoulder joint only moved in certain directions. Fight it and something tore. Follow it and you stayed intact. In 3 seconds, Dominic Carver was facing the wall. His right arm was pinned behind his back. His left hand was pressed flat against the brick. Isaiah stood behind him, close, controlling the angle, controlling the pressure. Enough to hold. Not enough to damage. The cafe was dead silent. Sophie stood behind the counter with her mouth open. The college students had their phones lowered. The elderly man in the flannel shirt sat with recognition dawning on his face. No one had expected this. They'd expected a brawl, wild swings, maybe broken furniture. They hadn't expected efficiency. Control. A man who moved like violence was a language he'd spoken so fluently that it required no thought, no effort, no emotion. "Stop moving," Isaiah said calmly. "You're going to hurt yourself." Carver struggled, jerked his shoulder, tried to throw an elbow. Isaiah increased the pressure just enough to freeze him, not enough to dislocate, just enough to send a message: keep fighting and this gets worse. Sirens cut through the silence. 2 police cruisers pulled up outside, lights flashing. 4 officers came through the door, moving with careful urgency. The first through was young, late 20s, blonde hair pulled tight, hand resting near her radio. The second was older, mid-50s, gray at the temples. His name tag read Jackson. Officer Jackson's eyes swept the room and landed on Isaiah. Something flickered across his face, recognition, maybe, or just professional assessment. Jackson moved toward them slowly, deliberately. "Want to tell me what happened here?" Isaiah released Carver immediately, stepped back, created distance. His hands hung loose at his sides, non-threatening. Carver spun around, face flushed, breathing hard. "This man assaulted me. I want him arrested. Do you know who I am? I'm Dominic Carver, Carver Properties. I've donated to the Police Athletic League. I know the commissioner personally." "Sir, I need you to calm down," Jackson said, voice professional but firm. He turned to Isaiah. "Your side." "He knocked over my table deliberately," Isaiah said, gesturing to the corner booth where coffee still pooled. "Shoved me twice. Threw a punch. I restrained him. Didn't strike him. Just held him until he stopped." Jackson looked at the table, looked at the stain on Isaiah's jeans, looked back at Isaiah's face. His eyes dropped briefly to Isaiah's wrist. There was no watch there now. Isaiah had sold his military-issue Luminox 2 years ago to pay for Cameron's asthma medication, but the tan line was still visible. The mark of something worn for years, something important. "Anyone here witness this?" Jackson called out. Sophie stepped forward immediately. "That's exactly what happened. The big guy went after him on purpose. This one," she pointed at Isaiah, "just defended himself. Didn't do more than he had to." The elderly man in flannel stood up. "She's right, officer. I saw the whole thing. And I know what I'm looking at." He walked closer, looked directly at Isaiah. You're military, aren't you, son? Special operations, if I had to guess. The cafe went even quieter, if that was possible. Jackson's posture shifted slightly, a subtle straightening that spoke of respect. That true? Isaiah met his eyes. Was. 16 years. Army. What unit? Can't say, sir. That answer told Jackson everything he needed to know. Units you couldn't talk about were the ones that did things civilians never heard about. The kind of operations that stayed classified for decades. Jackson nodded slowly. Mr. Carver, you're being removed for disturbing the peace. We'll talk outside. What? Carver's voice cracked. He assaulted me. I'm the victim here. No, sir, you're not. The younger officer had Carver by the elbow now. Multiple witnesses say you started this. You're lucky this gentleman showed restraint, because he could have put you in the hospital if he'd wanted to. As they walked Carver toward the door, the man turned back one more time. The bravado was gone now, replaced by something that looked like fear mixed with humiliation. But then his eyes locked on Isaiah, and something else flickered there. Not fear. Recognition. Bennett, Carver said slowly, the pieces clicking together in his head. Isaiah Bennett. You live in South Philly. You've got a kid at Webster Elementary. Isaiah's blood went cold. Carver smiled, a different smile now, sharp and dangerous. Yeah, I know exactly who you are. And this isn't over. Not by a long shot. After the police left, Officer Jackson lingered. He pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to Isaiah. That man's dangerous, Jackson said quietly. Not physically, you obviously proved that, but he's got money, connections, lawyers. He holds grudges. If he comes around again, you call me. Isaiah took the card. Thank you, officer. Jackson hesitated. What branch were you really in? The kind that doesn't exist on paper. Jackson nodded. Thank you for your service. And for not making this worse than it had to be. He offered his hand. Isaiah shook it. After Jackson left, Isaiah sat back down at his table, mind racing. How did Carver know his name? Know about Cameron? His phone buzzed. A number he didn't recognize. Against his better judgment, he answered. Hello. Isaiah Bennett. Carver's voice dripped with satisfaction. I bet you're wondering how I know so much about you. What do you want? Do you know what I do for a living, Mr. Bennett? I research properties. I look into neighborhoods. I find out who lives where, who pays rent, who's behind on their bills. Information is power. Isaiah's jaw tightened. Get to the point. Your landlord? He owes me money. A lot of it. And as of last week, I own the building you live in. 1247 South 9th Street, apartment 3B. You and that cute little boy of yours. The world tilted. I've been reviewing the tenant files, Carver continued, voice sickeningly cheerful. Looks like you've been late on rent 3 times in the past year. That's grounds for eviction under Pennsylvania law. I could have you out on the street in 60 days. You can't. Oh, but I can. And I will. Unless. Carver paused for effect. Unless you come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, and apologize. Publicly. In front of my staff. Get on your knees if you have to. Show some respect. Isaiah's hand tightened around the phone. Every instinct screamed at him to tell Carver exactly where he could shove his demands. But Cameron's face flashed in his mind. His son, who'd already lost his mother, who deserved stability, who shouldn't suffer because his father had a temper. What's it going to be, Bennett? Your pride or your son's home? Isaiah ended the call without answering. His mind was already moving, calculating, planning. Years of military intelligence training kicked in. Dominic Carver had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed Isaiah was helpless. That night, after putting Cameron to bed, Isaiah sat at his laptop and did what he should have done the moment he'd seen Carver's face: research. It took 3 hours, but Isaiah was patient. He'd once spent 6 days lying in the same position in the Iraqi desert waiting for a high-value target to appear. 3 hours at a computer was nothing. What he found was illuminating. Dominic Carver was a slumlord dressed in expensive suits. His company, Carver Properties, had dozens of violations from the city: unsafe living conditions, illegal evictions, harassment of tenants. But Carver had connections. His brother-in-law was a city councilman. His lawyer was one of the best in Philadelphia. Most damning, Carver was being investigated by the FBI for wire fraud and money laundering. The case had been building for 8 months. They were close to an indictment, but they needed evidence, testimony, someone willing to go on record. Isaiah kept digging. At 2 a.m., he found something that made him sit back in his chair. One of Carver's properties, a building in North Philly, had burned down 6 months ago. 3 people died, including a 9-year-old girl. The fire marshal ruled it accidental, but the family of the victims didn't buy it. They'd filed a wrongful death lawsuit claiming Carver had known about faulty wiring for months and done nothing because repairs would cost money. The case was ongoing. The family's lawyer was a woman named Patricia Okoye, a civil rights attorney with a reputation for taking on powerful opponents. Isaiah found her office number and sent an email at 2:17 a.m. "I have information about Dominic Carver. Need to talk." Then he went to bed, though sleep didn't come easy. The next morning, Isaiah dropped Cameron at school as usual, then drove to Carver Properties, a gleaming office building in Center City with gold letters and a doorman. He walked in at exactly 9 a.m., wearing the same clothes from yesterday, coffee stains still visible on his jeans. The receptionist, a young man in a tight suit, looked him up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Dominic Carver. He's expecting me." The receptionist made a call, then pointed to a seating area. "He'll be with you shortly." Isaiah sat and waited. Across from him, a dozen employees worked in an open-plan office. He recognized several faces, young professionals, probably fresh out of business school, seduced by the promise of big money and corner offices. At 9:20, Carver emerged from a glass-walled corner office. He was smiling. "Mr. Bennett. So glad you could make it. Come on back." Isaiah followed him into the office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Expensive furniture. Framed photos of Carver shaking hands with politicians, celebrities, athletes. Carver closed the door and gestured to a chair. "Sit." Isaiah remained standing. Carver's smile tightened. "Suit yourself. So, are you here to apologize, or do I start eviction proceedings this afternoon?" "I'm here to give you one chance," Isaiah said quietly. "Drop this. Leave me and my son alone. Find another building to play tyrant in." Carver laughed, a genuine bark of amusement. "Are you serious right now? You think you have leverage? You're broke. You drive a 15-year-old car. You work 2 minimum wage jobs. You're nobody." "Maybe. But I know things." "What things?" "I know about the building that burned down in North Philly. I know about the family that's suing you. I know the FBI is investigating you for fraud." Carver's smile vanished. "You're bluffing." "I also know," Isaiah continued, voice still calm, "that last night you made several calls trying to dig up dirt on me. Called your PI, called your lawyer, even called someone at the VA trying to access my military records." Carver's face went pale. "How do you?" "You're not the only one with connections, Mr. Carver. See, when you're Delta Force, you work with a lot of agencies. FBI, CIA, NSA. You make friends. And those friends remember you when you call asking for a favor." This was a calculated bluff. Isaiah didn't have active intelligence contacts, but Carver didn't know that. "What do you want?" Carver's voice was tight now. "I want you to leave me alone. And I want you to sell my building back to the original landlord at the price you paid. No profit. And if I don't? Then I make a call to Patricia Okoye, the lawyer representing that family whose little girl died in your fire. I tell her everything I've learned about your business practices. I testify in her case. I become the witness who takes you down." Carver stared at Isaiah for a long moment, calculating. Then, slowly, he started to smile again. "You know what your problem is, Bennett? You think this is about money. About buildings. About power. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folder. But this has always been personal. He tossed the folder onto the desk. Isaiah opened it. Inside were photos, old photos, some in black and white. Military records. Deployment rosters. And there, in a photo from 2009, was a younger Isaiah in full tactical gear, standing with his Delta team. Next to him in the photo was another soldier, Captain James Carver, Dominic's older brother. "Recognize him?" Dominic asked, voice cold now. "You should. You were on the same operation. October 2009, outside Kandahar. An ambush. Your team made it out." Isaiah's blood ran cold as the memory crashed over him. "My brother didn't," Dominic continued. "James was KIA. The official report said he died in a Taliban ambush. But I hired investigators. I found witnesses. I know what really happened." "Your brother made a choice," Isaiah said quietly. "He stayed behind to cover our extraction. He saved 8 lives that day. He was a hero. He was abandoned." Dominic's voice cracked. "You left him there. You ran while he died. That's not how it happened." "I don't care." Dominic slammed his hand on the desk. "I've spent 12 years looking for the men who were there. Who survived because my brother didn't. And now one of them walks into a cafe I happen to be in? That's not coincidence, Bennett. That's fate giving me a chance at justice." Isaiah stood very still. "Your brother gave the order to leave him. He was the ranking officer. He made a tactical decision. We wanted to stay, we tried, but he ordered us out. That's what happened," says the man who lived. "Yes. I lived. And I think about him every single day. Your brother saved my life. Saved all our lives. I named my son after him. Cameron was James's middle name." That stopped Dominic cold. "You, what?" "Cameron James Bennett," Isaiah said softly. "I wanted to honor your brother. I wanted his sacrifice to mean something. And I've tried to live a life that would make him proud." Dominic sank into his chair, the rage draining out of him. For the first time, he looked less like a predator and more like a man carrying 12 years of grief. "He was my hero," Dominic whispered. "When I was a kid, James was everything I wanted to be. Strong, brave, selfless. And then he was gone, and no one could tell me why. The army gave me a flag and a form letter. That's all I got." "I'm sorry," Isaiah said. "I'm sorry you didn't get the truth sooner. I'm sorry you've been carrying this anger." The office was silent for a long moment. Then Patricia Okoye walked in. Isaiah had sent her a text before coming up. She'd been waiting in the lobby. "Ms. Okoye," Isaiah said, "this is Dominic Carver. He has something he'd like to tell you about the building fire." Dominic looked between them, confusion replacing grief. "What is this?" "This is your chance to do what your brother would do," Isaiah said. "The right thing. Those people who died in that fire, they had families too. They deserve justice. You can give it to them." "And if I don't?" Patricia stepped forward. She was in her 50s, elegant, with eyes that had seen too many injustices. "Then I bury you in court. The FBI shares their findings with me. I make sure every newspaper in Philadelphia knows exactly what kind of man you are. And I win. I always win." Dominic looked at the photo of his brother on the desk. "James wouldn't want this," Isaiah said quietly. "Wouldn't want you using his memory as an excuse to hurt people. He believed in service. In protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Be the brother he would be proud of." Several minutes passed in silence. Finally, Dominic spoke. "The wiring. I knew about the wiring. My property manager told me. I said we'd fix it next quarter because I didn't want to lose rental income." His voice was hollow. "I killed those people. Not the fire. Me." Patricia pulled out her phone. "I'm recording. Keep going." 2 weeks later, Isaiah stood outside Webster Elementary at 3:14 p.m., watching the doors. Cameron burst out at 3:15 sharp, spotting his father immediately. His face lit up. "Dad! You're here! Told you I would be." They walked to the car together, Cameron chattering about his day, a new friend, a funny moment at lunch, a project he was excited about. Isaiah listened to every word like it was the most important thing he'd ever heard. Because it was. The apartment building had a new landlord. The original owner had bought it back from Carver's company at a steep discount. Rent was lowered. Repairs were being made. Dominic Carver had settled the wrongful death lawsuit for an undisclosed amount, rumored to be over $2 million. He'd resigned from his company and was cooperating with the FBI investigation. Word was he was setting up a foundation in his brother's name to help veterans transition to civilian life. Officer Jackson had called Isaiah a few days ago. "I don't know what you said to him, but Carver's a different man. Heard his selling off his properties and making things right with tenants. Sometimes people just need a reminder of who they are supposed to be," Isaiah had replied. Now, driving home with Cameron, Isaiah felt something he hadn't felt in years. "Peace. Dad?" Cameron asked. "Why are you smiling?" "Just thinking about how lucky I am." "To have me?" "Exactly." Cameron grinned. "Can we get pizza tonight?" "Sure, buddy. Pizza sounds perfect." As Isaiah pulled into their neighborhood, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the street, he thought about that moment in the cafe. How one confrontation had spiraled into something bigger, something that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with grief, guilt, and the weight of choices made years ago. Dominic Carver hadn't been evil. He'd been broken. And sometimes broken people just needed someone to show them how to start healing. That night, after pizza and homework and Cameron's bedtime routine, Isaiah sat on the couch with a beer he couldn't quite afford and looked at the photo of Alicia on the mantel. "I think you'd be proud," he said softly, "of the man I'm trying to be." The apartment was quiet, peaceful, home. And for a man who'd once lived in a world of constant danger, who'd seen things that would haunt him forever, who'd lost the love of his life and been left to raise a son alone, this quiet moment was everything. Sometimes the strongest thing a man can do isn't throwing a punch. It's showing restraint. It's choosing understanding over revenge. It's standing your ground without losing your humanity. Isaiah Bennett wasn't a hero because he could fight. He was a hero because he chose not to when it mattered. Because he saw past anger to the pain underneath. Because he understood that real strength is measured not by what you can destroy, but by what you can protect. And in the end, what he protected wasn't just himself or his son. He protected the memory of a fallen soldier. He protected the dignity of a broken man. He protected the possibility that even people who've lost their way can find it again. That's the kind of story worth sharing. If it moved you, hit that subscribe button. Because there are more stories like this, stories of ordinary people making extraordinary choices. Stories that remind us who we're supposed to be.